All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Catherine, Chris, Dan, Karen, and Marjorie. And we are glad to have you guys here. It's wonderful that we get together every Saturday and have these discussions. Today we're going to be talking about the verse 65 of the Tao Te Ching, and chapter 65 of Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao by Wayne Dyer. But before we get going, I want to give everybody an opportunity to jump in and introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, and then we can get this discussion going. So jump out there, guys.
Hi, this is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado. It's a beautiful day, and Sandy Root, who's another one of the panelists here, she can't be here this morning because she's on her way to Wyoming. She was able to stop by here for just a few minutes last night, maybe an hour or so. I tried to steal my wolf, and but we had a good time, and so she won't be joining us today, but we'll get some beautiful pictures from Jackson's Hole, I think is where they're going.
I'll go next. It's Marjorie. I'm sorry I'm off camera. I'm from Massachusetts, and I just recently joined this group. Thank you, Catherine, for inviting me. And I just find it a pleasure to be able to talk about things that I'm very passionate about and are very, very important to all of us right now to help assist the earth and the world and our universe and ourselves. So thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, Dan Sisakin in Las Vegas, Nevada. We actually are having some sun and a little warm up here. It kind of cooled down, and my allergies are really acting up. So if I sound very different, it's because it's still in my voice and in my throat. So, but I'm glad to be back because last week I just was not feeling it. So I'll let somebody else jump out now.
Good morning, I'm Karen Lohoff. I'm from Wyoming. I wish I was in Wyoming. I wish I was going to Jackson Hole or other points north and west. You can't get too much further west than Jackson Hole. I've lived in Arizona the greater part of my life. I was just reflecting yesterday how much of our lives we spend not with the people that we think of and love and all that kind of stuff, and same way with places. Glad to be on though.
Morning, Karen. Thanks for coming back, Marjorie. Hi, everyone. This is Christopher from Chicago, and it's nice to be in the company of friends. And I think you'll continue to enjoy being here, Marjorie. So I'm glad you came back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for joining us, Marjorie. It is wonderful adding new people to the panel, because then we get all these new insights and experiences, and we get to learn so many more things. It's just wonderful. I was listening to the replay from last week, and I just love what you shared. I love what Sandy shared and Karen. I mean, everybody. That was wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so this week we're talking about the Tao Te Ching, verse 65. Who wants to read the verse and get this? Okay, Chris, jump out there.
Tao Te Ching Verse 65. The ancient ones were simple-hearted and blended with the common people. They did not shine forth. They did not rule with cleverness. So the nation was blessed. When they think that they know the answers, people are difficult to guide. When they know they do not know, people can find their own way. Not using cunning to govern a country is good fortune for the country. The simplest pattern is the clearest. Content with an ordinary life, content with an ordinary life. You can show all people the way back to their own true nature.
Thank you, Chris. I love this verse. I love all the verses. But it's interesting how so many things in this particular verse follow right along with the conversation that you guys had last week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. And, it was talking about, not knowing, or not, you don't know the answers, and how you guys, so it was so funny, Sandy talking about the universe kicking your ass. I was laughing through that whole thing, but it's so true. And we think we know, and we don't know, and then something happens and it kicks us in the ass. Yeah, it's so funny. It's just so funny how it happens that way. And when it was talking about the simple, just keeping things simple, and Marjorie, you talking about life being simple, and then the previous verse, it was talking about taking things kind of one step at a time. And when we kind of put all these things together, then we get this grander knowledge of understanding, and we can kind of move forward in our lives. So who's got some thoughts on this verse this week?
It sure would be good if our governments ruled without cunning tricks. That was my thought.
Good luck with that. If I keep trying to get what I need is I need about a 2-mile screen so that I can see it. I'm trying to make enough room here so I can see the verse, so I can talk about the words that struck me there. I guess it's in the second paragraph, when they think that they know the answers. I was thinking yesterday, I think about this often, but I was just yesterday thinking of it, that if someone were to say to me, what do you think was the greatest harm that came in your childhood through people teaching you, thinking that they were teaching you your religion? And I realized, it took me well into my adulthood to realize that many of the things that I have problems with regards to the background that I had, most religions have the same thing, or I would have had the same problem in those religions. They maybe don't bother other people like they bother me, but the thing that I'm trying to get to is, I just can't seem to keep from saying it like this. The emphasis on this is the only true church. And what happened with me as I grew up with that ingrained in my being is I became quite elitist in several kinds of thoughts that have been very harmful to me. I couldn't even imagine being an elitist in any way when my first husband threw that out in an argument one time. Here I am in just dull clothes and dull hairdo and dull, everything. I'm thinking, what am I an elitist about? Well, I was an elitist in my thinking that, if I was party to the only true of anything, then I didn't really need you to tell me anything. I didn't need you to share your stuff with me. I didn't need, them to contribute anything that they might think that they had brought to the planet that might be useful to me. So, maybe I better take that picture off. It looks like my first husband also accused me of having a knurling in the brow. Anyway, sorry about that.
That's why he's your ex here. And I just have to say that being called an elitist is much better than some of the things I've been called.
Well, I was gonna jump out and say, like for me, I think the first couple lines, the ancient ones were simple-hearted and blended with the common people. They did not shine forth. They did not rule with cleverness, so the nation was blessed. I think, like going back to what you were saying, Catherine, that I think all governments try to outwit each other and outdo, and therefore, in doing that, kind of with I think each country in its own way of how it thinks it's doing what's best for its country at the time and stuff. But in reality, I also think that sometimes ours included, sometimes that you know, it's when we try to do all the clever things that we lose sight of, what the ultimate goal is, and two, it never plays out the way we see it playing out. Because the one factor is you can never factor in what that others are really going to respond or do. You can try to scenario it out and put it out there and think, okay, this, and this could happen. But in the long run, we really don't know. But if we go out with our true, authentic selves, and that goes for our countries and stuff and things like that, and from a place of, um, for lack of a better word, simpleness or humbleness in what we put out, we would get that back, I think. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there are times to use force. I think there are times when you need to, do certain things. But at the same point, I think, if you just change your thought a little bit, and uh, like when they think that they know the answers, people are difficult to guide. Well, we don't have all the answers, and so therefore, that's why governments are sometimes hard to guide. So that's my thought.
Yeah, that statement there of when people think they know all the answers, they're difficult to guide. It reminds me of teenagers, when they're first coming into their own kind of personality and they all of a sudden think they know everything, you know, and how difficult that is, I mean, I don't know. I remember being a teenager and I thought I knew everything. And now I look back and I'm like, God, I was so stupid, or not stupid, but just ignorant. That's what it boiled down to. But that's my no life experience, and you think you know everything. But Catherine, jump out there. I saw you were trying to do that.
Well, I don't think it might start in teenage years, but I deal with this every day. And Karen's cracking me up in the chat, sorry. The reason I put that in the chat, I put a little message to somebody in the chat because just the industry that we work in, this conversation is very appropriate for that, but we're going to try to steer away from there. But when people don't understand things, like they fear them, or if they think they know them, and Karen, I appreciate, what you said about the one, only, nobody, just because of my out-of-body experiences that I've had, nobody could ever convince me of that. So maybe I'm one of those people that think I know something, and can't be told, but all I can go by is like my own experiences there, I think that, and I don't want to necessarily make it a religious discussion, especially with the weekend that it is, because I know that people are celebrating or worshiping or something this weekend. But I think that I don't know that I agree with you, Dan, if governments always work for the best interest of the people. I think many governments work for the best interest of the people that are in office. And surely there are some good intentioned politicians. I'm not saying that there aren't. I mean, you would either have to be extremely servant hearted to even think about going into a position like that with as much as it requires, or extremely evil, one or the other.
Well, I was just going to say I wasn't meaning that that I think our country is really like that. I really don't. I think in a lot of ways our country. That's why I said our country is included in this. That a lot of what we do, we don't know everything. We don't know a lot of what they know because of the resources the governments have to do this and do that, and eavesdrop here and listen there and stuff like that. But I think, if they were to go more from what is being talked about here in how they approach things, things would plan out and work out a lot easier, and more might get done. That's more where it was leading towards. I wasn't saying, that I think that I don't think that a lot of governments act that way, including ours. You know, um, it's a nice thought, and it's nice to hope and wish that they would get there. You know, and once again, it goes back to us, putting the people that we believe are the best people to have in those positions too. But I don't want to get into that either. Um, but you know, but I like the one line here: the simplest path is the clearest. Content with an ordinary life. I think when we can get to that point where just being simply the best person we can be and put that out there, I think that's where you learn to you can be content and get back to the true nature of who you're supposed to be.
I caught this. It was like an advertisement for a a motivational speaker on Facebook, and so it was only like these little excerpts from one of his things that he does, and he was talking about how we limit ourselves so much by all of these beliefs that we have about ourselves, and how if we would just follow our heart instead of following our ego or what our ego thinks, what we're supposed to be or supposed to do or how we're supposed to act or whatever, if we just follow our heart and get back to that true divine nature within ourselves, that we would be so much greater than what we are. And it's interesting because this verse that's here and it says, where was that part? Yeah, they did not shine forth. Being blended with the common people, they did not shine forth, and being content with that simple life. And it's like in some ways, if you look at it the wrong way, it's like just be content with who you are and don't worry about it, and quit trying to be greater than you are. That kind of thing. It was kind of the things that I felt like they were trying to teach us in Bible school, was that everything and everyone else is all more important than you. And and that was, it's kind of like you could take it that way of just squash yourself down and you're not really that important, just be common. Or you could take it with that thought of if we just let go of all this crap that we think that we're supposed to be, do, have, etc., and get back to our own nature, is that we actually grow and become even more amazing than what we think we can be if we're trying to force ourselves to fit into this little narrow idea of what we think we're supposed to be. So it's really interesting how it's funny to me, because sometimes I read these little statements in here and I do wonder if people kind of want to blow this off because they're working on building a big grand business and they're working on becoming really super successful in that idea of what their definition of the success is. And then they see this thing that says simple is the clearest, content with an ordinary life, and it's like, but one thing I've noticed in the past couple of years of, kind of going from go, 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 go all the time to our time, our couple of years living in a camper at low means and with, minimal necessities and that sort of thing. And the spiritual journey that I feel like I've been on. And now here we are coming back into some more go, 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 but it's with a completely different attitude and a completely different mindset. And it feels so much different that, even this little mundane retail job that I have, I'm getting pleasure out of doing that, even though, years ago I'd have been like, I will never do something like that. It seems so stupid, right? But I don't know, it's just my thoughts about that.
Well, I really want to thank you for sharing the picture and especially the kind of a treatise. I mean, usually when you put something on Facebook, you've got a couple of lines that say, "Isn't this just on topic or something?" But you gave all those extra paragraphs of information that were really helpful to me in regards to that we have times that are like a shadow for the soul. You were mentioning, the ego and the, I mean, we have so many parts of ourselves. It's confusing for me sometimes, especially as a bipolar person who's experienced the severe types of depression that I have. When I start to get lonely, or I start to get feeling that it's been quite a long time since I've felt like I've had any awareness that I have done anything particularly well. It's kind of easy to veer off and think, well, is it this? Is it that? And I just found that really helpful. I mean, the picture was quite engrossing, but then to read really gave me pause for some other considerations for what has gone on in some of the darker periods. I mean, I feel like that line that says the dark night of the soul. At least 12 years ago, I thought, man, this damn this damn dark night has lasted, really a long time. Well, it's still lasting, so it's kind of helpful to have an extra little piece to the puzzle. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, if you guys were wondering what post she was talking about, I posted in the Facebook group. I shared something that someone else had shared in another group, and it was, and it's in the Facebook group. It just has a really dark, kind of weird picture that goes with it. It's very, I don't know, I think it's kind of a depressing picture, but it's weird. But anyway, in the Facebook group, there'll be a link below this video if you're watching this on YouTube to join us in the group. There's Marjorie. Now we can see you.
I ate half my breakfast, so I decided I should join you. Well, I'll try and share something. I have my cell phone too, so I can look at the verse. Well, I guess I appreciate everything that people shared, and I was thinking that about. Well, I'm into really, and I don't want to get into it because I don't really know what people's feelings are or beliefs. Just like Catherine was saying, it's a special religious weekend, or maybe I shouldn't use the word religious, but and it's not like I don't connect with that at all. It's just that I'm not really into conventional church. I totally, believe in God and Jesus Christ, but I just don't actively go to church on certain religious holidays and such. But I do connect with other beliefs and knowledge, I guess. I'll just keep it really kind of general like that. And so when I read the words, the ancient ones, I wasn't really thinking of, I was thinking of benevolent beings who are here to guide us. And I'm Chinese descent. My parents have been trying. I'm thinking, I don't even know this. I mean, I know something about the source where you got the quote, but I don't really know much about him as a classic teacher, spiritual teacher. So I can't even really connect with what exactly he might have written this and things like that. But when I think of the words ancient ones, that's what I think of is, coming to us, um, that these are beings guiding us, and the people who are being guided are looking at them as very knowledgeable, powerful, and yet these ancient ones are being very simple-hearted, as it says, and not, when it says not shining forth, not dominating, just wanting to do good, to be benevolent is the word I keep thinking of. And it says things like, not ruling with cleverness, so that the nation was blessed, because they're coming from a true heart, is what I was thinking. They're just looking for the common good and wanting everyone to benefit from waking up and being blessed, and then the last bit, there's more I could say, but I'm losing track of my thoughts. Um, and I'll come back, I'll share, all of us are here to share that I'm just trying to read this too, that you can show all people the way back to their own true nature. And that to me is so important. I'm not thinking of government, I'm thinking more like people who are leaders or people who know more and want to guide. And so when you bring people back to their own true nature, my thought here is really our real essence, which is really love and the goodness inside ourselves and our divine nature. And I'm thinking that the people who are guiding are being very, very humble here. They're being very humble, and they're not looking to do more than just to support everybody, and to shepherd them in a good way, not like I'm higher than you. And so I think that this is really a beautiful verse for our time, because I really do feel that in this world right now that we're going through something really immense. I go to different sources, and I've been following some of these sources for a long, long time, and finding more strength in going back to my sources and using more what they're sharing, which is really prayers and invocation and waking people up to that we all need to do the spiritual work right now, which is what I feel this group is all about. And like this verse really hits home for me, that we all have to do this real beautiful spiritual work inside ourselves, which is really waking up and realizing that's the only power we have in our lives and in our world is within ourselves, to wake up to our true nature, which is love. And then by doing that together like we are in this group, that it becomes a huge, powerful consciousness, and that we bring that forth into the whole world, into our lives, into our groups, into our environment, into our world, and help lift everything up. And that is what is going to change ourselves and our lives and everything around us, our whole world. And that's the only work we can really do. It's the most important thing we can be doing. So in that sense, I see that last line, you can show all people the way back to their own true nature. And so here we are, we're being powerful. We're waking up to our own true nature, which is to together create this mass creative consciousness. And then by having that, we can create and we can manifest, and we will. And that really is our true nature. That's how powerful we are. So I'll stop there because I could go on and on like that. I'm not sure it's making any sense. Thank you.
No, that made really good sense. You were explaining the verse really well. Appreciate that. I was thinking, no, I got nothing better than that to offer. That was nice commentary. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of makes you, it does make you think of politicians a little bit. And I was thinking, Yeah, that does. I do think of teenagers. I think you said that, Catherine. I think they know the answers. I was like that too. Before you're 20, you know everything. When you're 21, you're not so sure. When you're 25, you don't know what's going on anymore.
Took me till I was about 30 to realize I didn't know anything.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But I was going to jump out and say, in looking into the chapter, it says the realization you're invited to consider here is that your job is to help others know that they don't know. If they believe that they do have knowledge, then they'll never find their way back to their Tao nature. That's because they're relying, as you said, Samantha, relying on ego input, which tells them that their true essence is their identification with the physical material world, which I think goes in along with what Marjorie was saying, that one who lives according to the Tao knows that ego is false master, drawing people away from their true nature. But if we get back to that simple, that basic, that humble, and knowing that we don't know it all, opens us up to being open to what can push us in the right direction that we need to go. And I think, that falls well into what Marjorie was saying, in that, you know, just understanding that we don't know it all I think really is the key, and helps us to get that ego out of us.
Samantha, I loved what you said about having that time of solace and simplicity, and then being taken back into community, which is exactly what happened to me. I was up on the mountain with my dogs, and it was quiet, and I loved it. And then God said, go forth and be with the people. And I went, no. And they said, yes. And so I had to come off of the mountain and come down where I could have internet and speak to the people. But it's different. When you're once you've had that solitude, and thankfully for me, I had that solitude at a really, like 12 years of age, I had that solitude. So, but a lot of people never get that solitude, but it's once you have it, however you find it. And I have to say that because yesterday I listened to what some people would consider metal music. I mean, it was really just shredding. It was fabulous technical guitarists just shredding, and but I found such a meditative space in that. Like, you can find that space in the chaos. Once you get that space, you can bring it with you, which is so beautiful. And we were just talking about this on a different call yesterday. That's what keeps you sane in this world sometimes, is reconnecting with that. It's not just space, that's you. That's your Tao, as they refer to it, or your yourself, your real self, not your ego self, and not this human self, but your real self. And you can for years I had certain times that I meditated for certain amounts of time. Like, I had all these rules around it. And one of my guides, who I refer to as grandfather because he's an old native, but I don't know if he's not like, I mean, he could be my great grandfather. I don't know. He was a shaman. So, but he has always come to me and given me guidance. And about 5 years ago, maybe, the only message he would give me was under the sky, under the sky, under the sky. And I was like, what in the hell are you talking about? And finally, I got it, be in that space all the time, under the sky. There was no need to have all these rules around it, that I could just carry that with me and be in a constant meditative state, which doesn't make sense to some people. How can you be in a constant meditative state and be working and, doing all these things? But you can snap back into it in less than an instant. You can just, once you capture it, it's like that firefly in the thing or something, you just have it and you can always tap. I mean, it's always there. People just have to learn. And a lot of people get hung up on the rules and then they think they can't do it. Oh, well, I can't, sit without moving for 2 hours. Well, you don't have to sit without moving for 2 hours, take the rules away from it, find your way to reconnect. And that could be through religion. That could be through, whatever you want to call it. People find things different ways, because I've gotten to be in a lot of churches in my younger years, and people on this panel know this. My grandmother raised me, and she referred to me as a heathen because I was just always taking my clothes off and running around healing shit with my hands and telling her that people just died, and then the phone rang. And so I kind of freaked her out, and she sent me on every church bus that came by. So I got to go to probably every denomination church there is. And as an empath, being in that environment, the feeling that people are feeling there, when they're really, if they would say, allowing the spirit to flow through them, that's what I feel when I'm doing energy work. It's no different. We just call it different things. I mean, I call it God flowing through me too, but we just, I'm not a Bible scholar, go to church or whatever, because they have a lot of rules there that I think as humans, we put a lot of rules around things that cause separation for people. And then for me, typical as a kid, I go to these different churches and I see the hypocrisy of what's going on. I go to church, and especially God knows if my aunt took me to church, I always got beat after church for doing something I wasn't, and I thought, how hypocritical is that? You're supposed to be talking about love and all this, and then you just beat the shit out of everybody the minute you get out, or it's like 2 days of torture preparing for Sunday to be ready for church, and everything has to be ironed exact. I mean, so many rules, and it causes separation, and there's no separation between God and you because we are the same. So, but if you find your own way to reach that, whatever it is, hopefully, well, I shouldn't say that, because some people find bliss in some very sick things. But, as long as it's not harming anybody, find your bliss. Find it often enough that you can carry it with you in your pocket when you need it, because it'll be your best tool. Now I'll shut up.
It's good. Now I'm looking for the bliss button. That's pretty good. No, yeah, cleverness. The idea of politics and religion seem to be really obvious ones to me there. Like I don't know, within politics and also government-run situations and religion. There's a whole lot of cleverness, but then there's even I'd probably go so far as to say there's a lot of deceit in our lives, Then I'm also thinking even at a more subtle level, within spirituality, then there's a lot of little groups or little things you can get involved with, but then often you'll notice within even small groups or different things, sometimes a group will have just little clever rules, but it doesn't necessarily sit right with you. So you feel a little uncomfortable. You're I'm not sure if I agree with this particular thing, even though I mostly resonate with what they're doing. Okay, it's a nice Buddhist group, but I'm not feeling it from this one particular person per se or something, So it's that cleverness can be kind of can come from anyone and ourselves. And that's where I was thinking, when it said, think they know the answers, I was I don't think I have the answers, but there's like something like someone was trying to give me advice yesterday, and I was like, so I was feeling that in myself, sometimes it's hard to take advice too.
I like what you said, Catherine, about taking that meditative state with you wherever you are, and that you can tap into it at any point. And I think you're right. There are a lot of people that struggle with that because of the rules they think are involved with meditating, and what you think you're supposed to do in order to get that state. But I wanted to kind of bring up some examples. Is that one thing that I feel like meditative state is, you can, whenever you're daydreaming, you're kind of off in that little peaceful world doing your little daydream, and that's the same kind of thing. If you are artistic in any way, if you're playing music in that space, in that moment when you're doing that, or if you're painting or you're woodworking or anything that brings you that kind of just peacefulness inside yourself, those things that you say that you're getting away from all the chaos and you're doing these things, well, you can't do it the other way around, where you're in the chaos and you can grab those feelings from that time that you're escaping and just bring that feeling over yourself like a warm blanket, and take that moment within the chaos to just feel that feeling. And that's that meditative state that we're talking about. That's that peace that you can bring into any moment in any situation, regardless of what's going on. Even if you're in the heat of like an insane argument with your spouse, as you could just pause and bring yourself into that calm and collected moment and let go of the ego part that is causing you to fight, and just be like, okay, I'm not that ego. I'm this peace right here. And that's where you can be. So I just wanted to bring that up. And also I wanted to address what Marjorie was talking about when she mentioned the ancient ones. When I read this, I didn't even think about the fact that, okay, when Lao Tzu wrote this thousands of years ago, he was talking about even more ancient ones than I'm sitting here thinking Lao Tzu is the ancient one. I wasn't thinking about him saying ancient ones. And so thank you for bringing in that perspective. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Who was he talking about, So thank you.
Well, a lot of thoughts came to my mind as I was listening to all of you just now. And, Catherine is very open and sharing. And I was thinking, well, I guess I could mention that I love to connect with the archangels. It's not like I'm an expert on angels or archangels, but, when you're on the path and you're looking for answers, of course, you're going to pay attention to the idea of, angels and what are they? And so it's just something that, I've spent time trying to learn more about. And Catherine's heard this before. I happened to buy a book, I forget when, a couple months ago, and it literally is a book about Archangel Metatron, who I didn't know anything about him. I didn't even know his name. I thought he sounds like a Transformer character, in one of those movies, and I think there really is a character like that named Metatron. But he is a really powerful archangel, and I'm not going to try and repeat, his sort of like a list, but he's supposed to be the one angel that did live on earth as a human being, Enoch, I don't know how to say his name, Enoch. And so he is the archangel that connects most easily with humans and with our mundane worldly problems that we have. And he's the one that was, the first time I heard his name was from a woman who's very psychic and a medium and had done psychic readings for me recently. And she said, well, ask Archangel Metatron to help you, because I was talking about my living situation and my landlord and maybe having to move. So when I found the book, that really awakened me to a lot of the messages that I shared recently about living simply, because it's a book written by a woman who is psychic and can channel and uses inspired writing, and trying to teach you in the book how to do that yourselves, that we all can do that inspired writing, connecting with our, angels, with Archangel Metatron, etc. And so the beauty of it all is just that, like Catherine was talking about living under the sky, that whole idea of living in meditation constantly, like Samantha was just saying. And so she mentioned in the book, well, I talk to Metatron every day, every moment. I'm having conversations with him in my daily routine. And I was thinking, I need to do more of that. I don't want to just be quiet when I'm so-called meditating, even though I'm not a great meditator as I think of it. And just be with him all the time, because what is beautiful about the book and learning more about the archangels and angels is just knowing that they're here to help us. That's all they're here to do. There's no judgment. I love the fact that from Catherine I learned the concept, like there is no judgment from on high, or there should be no judgment amongst ourselves. And so the angels have no judgment. They're just here to help us, and they're here for everybody, and I love that. I love the fact that, so when I think of the ancient ones, I guess I could, you can think of it as the angels, the archangels, the highest level of angels, the archangels. And there's different archangels for everything. There's Archangel Michael is really the one I connected a lot with, because I have this beautiful swordfish sword that looks like it is an awesome sword with a lot of power behind it, just looking at it. But also just there's Archangel Raphael, who's here for healing, and Archangel Ariel for your spirituality. I only can quote these names because I found it in the book. There's a little chart there. But the whole point really is that they're here for us. And in my readings that I had with this particular woman who's very powerful, I had Archangel Michael in the first reading. Then I had Archangel Metatron in the second reading. And I just wanted to say that that's what I was thinking about, is that that's the way I want to live. When you look back at the verse and you're talking about things like, you know, the simplest, the simplest pattern is the clearest. So that's the way I think I should be living, that I want to live, and I'm working on it, and it gives me the most peace and happiness inside myself, and then content with an ordinary life. I would be very content with an ordinary life if I could always be with the angels and just know who I am, and know that I'm living the right way, that I'm living with, love and gratitude and happiness and joy, and then I know who I am and what I am, and that I know my being, and that would give me so much happiness. I don't want more in life, this life. I mean, I want to help people and things like that, but if I can at least do that for myself, for myself in my daily life, and all that is like a gift in this lifetime, that I wake up and know that this is what it's all about, not all these other things that we've all lived through, going to school and struggling and trying to be great at work, at your so-called job and things like that. And that's going back to my own true nature. So, and then some other thoughts I had when I was listening to Chris is that truth. I feel like this world that we live in right now, that the truth is coming out. I'm paying attention to the series called The Truth About Vaccines, and it's like mind-blowing. And that's the kind of thing I'm really into. I checked into these other online docu-series. The truth about cancer, the truth about autoimmune diseases. Now it's the truth about vaccines. And there's so much out there that we can tap into. Even like us coming every week and learning about these verses and talking about what we get from it, that's truth too. So I think that's the theme of our world right now, is like the veil is thinning, the veil is being lifted, our mirage that we live in is becoming less, we certainly don't believe in it anymore, and we're looking for the truth. So that's what I find beautiful about today's world, is that all the work that we're doing, the spiritual work, is to help assist lifting that veil, getting to the truth, knowing who we really are, and then living the kind of life that we're meant to live, that's very powerful and co-creative. And so anyway, thank you for listening.
When I read Ancient Ones, my first thought was, this will be way out there, but my first thought was, I don't even know if I want to go there. Anyway, because you know where I'm going, Marjorie.
Well, I was going to say, please do, because I don't really know if, because here we are.
Well, I don't know
wasn't it Chris that just said the limits? Like, you know, you went to a Buddhist thing and they were like limits and rules and people that acted like they knew everything. So I don't know, because I feel the same hesitancy as you, Catherine, because I'm really new. But I'd love to hear what it is that you have to say, if you feel like you can and you have the, because it really takes courage and bravery, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't remember being here when this earth was created. I don't know what my beliefs are. I have some thoughts about it just from different things that I've experienced since I've been here. My first thought, though, when I read Ancient Ones is other planetary beings that I think probably seeded this earth. And I think that's probably how we got there. But that was my first thought when I read Ancient Beings. And then also my guides that come to me. And I had to, sometimes I'm cracking up laughing when you guys seem to be talking about really serious stuff, but it's because, you know, my guides, when you talk about not having ego, when my guides come in to speak to me, they're not like, dun 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 dun, Lord Metatron. You know, they don't like play their stage song before they come out or anything, you know. It's just, or like Kuan Yin, you know, she doesn't make this big presentation, but she envelops me in compassion, like to the point of tears when she comes in. I know exactly what she feels like when she comes in. Or I know exactly what that frequency that I call Kuan Yin feels like. I mean, I don't even know how to really describe it, but the guides have extremely different signatures, energy signatures, I'm going to call it. You can feel it in your body, who it is that's speaking to you. It's not, I do hear them audibly, but not always. Sometimes I just feel them come in and I know immediately who it is, if it's Michael or if it's Metatron or if it's Kuan Yin or, you know, whoever it is. And then sometimes I'm cracking up because everybody here on this panel, I don't know if I've even talked to you, Marjorie, about my, you know, we all have a male and a female side to us. And my male side is like this mountain man that is just horrendous. Like I have to keep him in line constantly. And he has an ego. And you can't tell him anything because he thinks he knows it all. But I think it's all about remembering. You know, we all know all of this stuff. Some people are just remembering. Some people get exposed to things early. Like I was just knocked out of body at 2. I mean, I remember it so clearly. So I know, you know, I just know that I'm not that body. And so it made for a completely different set of circumstances throughout my whole life. Some people are just beginning to realize they're not their body when they're like my age now, you know, or maybe they haven't even realized it yet. Maybe they don't realize it until they're on their deathbed and they're leaving their body and they're looking down on it going, well, holy shit, you know, I wasn't who I thought I was for that whole time. So, but you know, none of us, it could just as easily be a freaking hologram. I got totally freaked out last night. I don't know why, but for the first time in my life that I can ever remember, I watched the moon come up at 11 o'clock at night. We're out there with the bonfire, you know, we're just talking, having fun. All of a sudden I look over and there's this huge, almost full moon rising. And I'm like, what time is it? It's 11:15. I'm like, why is the moon rise? Doesn't it rise like as the sun sets or something pretty close? I can remember days when I was looking one direction, seeing the moon come up and seeing the sun set on the other side at the same time. So I'm sure it has something to do with the time of the year. But I was like, whoever threw up the hologram tonight is drunk. They fell asleep. For all I know, it could all be a hologram. So I'm not an expert on any of it, but that was just my first thought when I read Ancient Ones.
Yeah, I guess we are getting close to the end here, but it's bringing up like a whole bunch of interesting things. Yeah, sometimes I've seen the sun, or I've gone like traveled like across the country, and the sun's been out there, and I'll be like, it doesn't seem like the day I thought it was, or suddenly directions will seem different. And I'm like, God, that is so weird. Like, my idea of directions seem to change. The thing you said about the moon, though, that's kind of interesting is like, well, then there's obviously a different cycle of the way the moon's moving than the sun. So obviously it has a different and shorter pathway. And I think our timings on how the planets work, it's so big, we don't like really fully grasp it all the time. Anyway, that wasn't really a closing remark, but I guess we are getting towards the end. It's been great today. Yeah, that was pretty good though. No, I'm glad you went there. I think we should like talk about whatever we want. We could go into the Book of Enoch next, then we'd be like totally out there. I think talking about angels every week, that could be interesting.
Well, I was gonna share that I've had so many psychic readings because I guess in many ways I am a truth seeker. I'm into astrology, by the way. So like, but I have to confess I don't understand the moon cycles. I mean, obviously there's new moons and full moons, but I've never really like tried to really study it and understand every bit of what the moon phases mean. So I basically am one of those people who love the subjects, but I'm not on a technical level, Chris, because I obviously know more about the planets from an astrological viewpoint, but I'm not going to consider myself any kind of like astronomer or something like that. But I wanted to say that I've had so many psychic readings, and so Catherine, I'm glad you shared what you did about other planetary beings, because that's exactly what I believe in. I've studied this for so long, decades, literally. I'm 63, so I've been studying this stuff pretty much, open to it from a very young age, and then actively more and more in my 20s and 30s, and it just went crazy, once I got into astrology, which was really in my late 30s. And so I spent at least 20 to 30 years studying this stuff, and I like from all means, either books, online, psychic people, readings for myself, my children, etc. Just exploration in every way. And I read fiction, nonfiction. So I've been told by a woman that I really respect, who's no longer here on the earth plane, who read the Akashic records while she was awake, so she could literally talk to me and be sitting in the library. And that's Archangel Metatron. He's connected with the Akashic records and the library, so I had many readings with her about my Akashic records, which is you go into the library in the heaven world, and there's a book of your soul, your book, your Akashic record. That's the book of every lifetime you've lived. So I definitely know that we're all like very ancient beings ourselves. Think of that. We're the ancient ones. We've lived many lifetimes. And so one of the readings she told me is that I am a star child in my own family. I have a family of six. I come from a family of 6 children, So that was cool, because we're like wanderers. That's the word they use, wanderers. We're really not here as true human earth beings. We came from other. I think I remember her telling me that I came from Venus. My original soul came from Venus, and a lot of us did. And so we're wanderers here on earth. And that's why we feel a little out of place. And that's why we're here in this group. You know? And the other thing I loved was that one of the readings she did for me, Catherine talking about, you know, are you aware? Are people aware that you're not just living this one little lifetime here in this simple body that you have right now? My father died when I was not quite 30, and he was only 57, and he's from China. And I didn't really know him very well because that's just the way we grew up. It's sort of traditional Chinese family where parents didn't talk to you much. You just sort of live your mundane life, you know. So here's a father that I didn't really know as a person, and he's gone already. And in the reading, she just said, I asked about him, how's my dad? Or, you know, just a simple question. And she said that he's doing great in the heaven world, and that he's very proud of you because you woke up. You're spiritually awake. You're doing the work. You know about the spiritual life and metaphysics. And that just made me cry because I had never really gotten much from my dad as far as like real compliments or real heart-to-heart discussion. So here's my dad proud of me because I am awake. I woke up. I'm doing the work. And that just meant so much to me. So that's what we're all doing by being here every week. And so it's beautiful. You know, that's the kind of life that we're all meant to live, is a real, authentic, real, genuine life where we're vibrant and awake to what's going on. And so we need to hold on to that so hard, because that's the work that we're doing right now. Because the other thing that this woman shared with me, her name is Roberta Herzog, and they still have kind of like this clunky website. And she wrote a book about the Akashic record, which I've never even ordered. You can get it online as like an ebook, or just buy the hard copy. And so the whole point is really that we're here to do the work, to wake up and share. And so I love that we're here and we're doing that. And because I don't want to think it's rare, but I guess it is rare. You know, it's not that many people awake. And yet that's the most important thing we can do, because nothing happens without our work. It's not like angels can swoop in and take care of us and our lives and our world. It's literally, because one of my spiritual teachers says this, none of the work gets done unless there's a human body to do the work. So we have to do the one doing the prayers, the meditation, the invocations, the doing what we're doing right now, right? That's the only way things change, because then we bring more light in, we bring the higher vibrations in, and we push down and transmute the negative energies, the negative vibrations, the negative thoughts. So we have to do the work. Us in the human bodies, we have to do the work. The angels can assist us and such, but nothing happens with us doing it. So anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me. Thank you for sharing all of that, Marjorie. I'm so appreciative that you have found us and joined in to add your thoughts and insights and your completely new perspective on our conversations. I love that. And you know, so for anybody who's out there watching this as a recording, you know, please jump in. We would love to hear what your thoughts are on the things that we're talking about. And of course, you can meet with us every week. You can find our live link by going to zoom.saturdaymorningmastermind.com. And of course, below this video, there'll be a link to get in our Facebook group too. But before we wrap up, I want to does anybody else have any final words before we end for today?
I'm going to say something real short.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are all born with such unique abilities and talents and gifts. And I just think, you know, it seems like from the minute we're born, people start trying to conform us into being this other thing or this thing or this thing, you know, and it's just such a shame. If people can just, you know, explore themselves and find their gifts and use those. Like you said, Marjorie, the work doesn't happen unless we use our gifts. And I happen to belong to groups of hundreds of thousands of awake people. So there's a lot more than you might think.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, guys. Well, have an awesome, amazing week. Thank you all for joining us this week. And you can find us at SaturdayMorningMastermind.com, or you can find all the replays for all of our previous discussions at SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. And of course, below this video, there'll be a link to join our Facebook group. We'd love to have you jump in, add your thoughts to our conversations. Join us on this live panel and tell us what you think too. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing weekend. We'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.